Okay. All right. I think we are now live. Welcome. Welcome, everybody, to Comics in Color, Volume 30. I'm very excited to be here today to talk with y'all. I'm just trying to set everything up. Excuse me. Just trying to keep everything together here. All right. Bear with me for just a moment. Trying to do tech and be the host is always challenging. But we are going to get through it together. Okay, last thing. Hey, Jam, what's up, man?
Cagen, my brother, how are you?
I am doing well.
How's everything?
Everything is good.
Listen, man, I know you're already a big fan, but I was like, yo, let me see what this Mandalorian thing is all about.
Oh boy.
And I gotta say,
It's hot.
yo, it's hot, man.
It's hot. It's hot.
It's hot. It's smoking hot, man. I gotta
But we're gonna
say.
don't worry, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk. But let me just get started here. Just we're gonna get started. Welcome to Comics in Color Volume 30 once again. I'm very excited to be here, and we're gonna have a great time today. So we're gonna be talking to Myranda Peterson a little bit later about her work. But first, we're just gonna get into some news here. First of all, I wanted to announce that Megascope, which is a comics imprint helmed by John Jennings, who is a big name in comics right now. I think the name of the overarching company is Abrams Press, but they just announced their spring lineup of new comics. Now, Megascope focuses on comics by and about people of color, which is something we can all get into here. And I'm very excited to see what their lineup is like coming up. So look out for that. Um, oops, okay. Next, I wanted to talk about Method Man now has a podcast where he talks about Marvel stuff, which sounds really interesting. I really want to see it. I mean, I want to listen to it. It's on Sirius, so that I don't have a subscription to, but somehow I'm going to figure out how to check that out because the Woo, not only for the children, but the Woo is also all about comics. I mean, if you go back to their first album, and it's all littered with comic references to the point where Ghostface was calling himself Iron Man, and Method called himself Johnny Blaze, which are comic book references in themselves. So I know that that's going to be super dope, and they're going to have a lot of cool hip hop people and people in the business to come and talk about comics. So if you get a chance to check it out, please do. And if you have a serious subscription you want to let me use, let me know because I really want to hear it. Wanted to announce that Ava DuVernay is going to be producing a series. And I'm not absolutely positive who she's doing it for, but it's on Naomi, which is a DC comic property about this young woman who travels around in space. But if Ava is doing it, it's going to be dope because everything she does is dope. So check that out whenever that surfaces. Um, I just wanted to highlight our friends at Frugal Books were on the Drew Carey show where they were highlighting Black-owned businesses. And as you may or may not know, Frugal Books, who is a friend of Comics in Color, so much so that we even have a rack there where we have comics from our artists in our group, including myself, where you can go buy them at Frugal Books, which is right in Nubian Square. But they've been a good friend and the only Black-owned bookstore in Boston. So we definitely got to support them. And it was just a huge deal that they were on a national um, show like the Drew Barrymore show. So shout out to them for all the good work they do and for getting some much deserved praise on the big screen or the big TV. Ekbach, which is the East Coast Black Age of Comics. Now I'm missing one C. It's the longest name for a comic convention ever, but it's the longest running Black comic convention, I think, in the country. In Philadelphia. I went there 2 years ago. It was really, really good. I mean, Philly is just such a chocolate city. When we went there, there was Wizard Con happening the same time as, which is the big, con in Philly. It was happening at the same time, and they still had hundreds of folks come to this event. So it's really cool, and they're doing it today. They're doing some online programming. I think it's ekbach.com. So go check that out. They do some really great stuff and always get some really great artists and stuff in. Um, Next, we have the Black in Animation Awards show. So Black Women Animate and Cartoon Network teamed up to put together an award show. I think it happened last week, December 6th, but it's still available on their website, which is down on the bottom here, where you can go check it out. So it's hosted by Estelle, the singer who does the voice for Garnet on Steven Universe. But they're just highlighting, specifically women, Black women who are doing animation, which I think is definitely worth highlighting and some great stuff there. So I haven't had a chance to check it out, but I hope to this week. But there's the link to it right there. So please check that out and give the folks some love. And then here's what I'm most excited to talk about in the news today. On Thursday, Disney dropped like just mind-blowing amount of content that they're going to be putting out there, including like season 3 of The Mandalorian Jam. So that's super exciting, but also a few that I didn't even know about. Like the Andor, which I think is really exciting. Cassian Andor, a character from Rogue One, is going to be a prequel for him and how he got to be in the Revolution and all that stuff. So I think that should be really good. Diego Luna is the actor's name. He'll be helming it, and he's dope. And of course, Rogue One is probably the best Star Wars movie. I mean, that's debatable, but I think it's either the best or the second best Star Wars movie. Uh, and so he was a really cool character. And what I really liked about him was he was kind of an anti-hero, like the whole hand shot first thing with Greedo. But there's a scene in Rogue One, I'm sure you've all seen it, where he just like, he's about to get discovered and he just shoots this guy and just stops from getting discovered. So I think he's a really interesting character and he'll do what he needs to be done for the Republic, right? Or for the Revolution. So I think that's going to be dope. Um, I think what I'm most excited about is the Bad Batch, which is a continuation of the Clone Wars, which we were introduced in the Clone Wars. They had a whole episode in season 7, if you haven't seen it, which was super dope. There are a bunch of clones in the Clone Wars. I think this actually takes place after the Clone Wars, judging by the previews. But a group of they're called the Bad Batch because they were like a bad batch of clones. They didn't come out perfect. They all have these weird special abilities or mutations that makes them different and special.
I
So
was wondering why they all looked so different from each other.
right.
But
So they're the
all right,
Bad Batch because they were literally a bad batch of clones that came out, and they figure into the Clone Wars series, and you can see a little bit about them there. But it's going to be dope, most definitely. And of course, the Ahsoka series. If you've been watching The Mandalorian, spoilers ahead, Ahsoka is featured heavily in, what was it, 2 weeks ago? That she was in the episode The Jedi,
yeah,
played by Rosario Dawson, who is, I was um, admiring for a long time now because she's like a nerd goddess over many different things. But to have her in there, and I mean, of course, Ahsoka is arguably the best character in Star Wars at all. But just to bring her in and to have the backstory, more backstory, and I'm super excited about this series. I think it's going to be extra dope. And of course, anything that expands the Star Wars universe, I'm in love with. So Rogue Squadron, I'm super excited about. The Alkalite, I don't know what it's about, but I'm excited about it. Star Wars Visions, I have no idea. But there's they put out a whole bunch of previews. I mean, like trailers and stuff out there. So there's just a list of them that are really excited. The only thing that I don't see, I mean, I think the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is going to also be dope. What I don't see on this list, which I thought I had heard was coming, was the Knights of the Old Republic. Did anybody else hear that series, they were working on a series for the Knights of the Old Republic?
Wow, a series, huh? No, I didn't get word of that.
Yeah, I know they've done the game, but
yeah.
I heard that Disney Plus was going to be developing a series for that, but I don't know.
Dude, Disney is going nuts, man.
They're going absolutely nuts. And also, which I didn't even know until I saw this, was The Children of Blood and Bone, which is Tomi Adeyemi's novel, which is super dope. I'm actually reading it right now. It's very, very good. So I'm excited to see what they'll do with that. I don't know. I hadn't heard about that until today, but of course, and of course the Lando series, which we have to talk about because that's. I don't think that they definitely didn't name Donald Glover as who is going to play Lando, so I'm not really sure who they're going to play, who's going to play it, but I'm excited about that. However, whoever ends up playing it, I think that's going to be super dope because Lando is such a great character. He was in the Clone Wars as well, in being shady, just generally speaking. So I really like his rogue kind of way. He's a rogue guy. So this is not all of the stuff that they announced, right? There's actually more stuff. I know that like the Miss Marvel series is coming soon. Series we already knew about were coming up, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which looks dope. They definitely put out a trailer for that. And what was the other thing? It was some other series and stuff they're putting out, but
it was like Loki and WandaVision.
Right. Loki, I wanted to talk about because the woman from WandaVision, thank you. The woman from Lovecraft Country, the woman who played Ruby. I'm not going to try to pronounce her name because without it written in front of me, it would be really bad. But she's going to be in that. I'm not sure who she's playing, but anything she's in, I'm into. So there's a lot of great stuff. The only thing that bothers me about Disney Plus, because they're producing all the content I've ever wanted to see, but they always do coming soon. It's like oh my God, look, here's a Bad Batch series. It's going to be the best thing you ever saw coming soon. All I want to know is when, how long do I have to wait? And they never tell you, and it drives me crazy. But that is, so that's my announcements for today. Does anybody else have anything they want to say about these amazing drops from Disney?
Disney also mentioned, I mean, they talked about everything, like you said, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, WandaVision, Miss Marvel, but they confirmed the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
As well, which I'm excited for. And I'm not even a super fan of the Fantastic Four, but just their theatrical treatment.
It's been terrible.
It's like, man, I can't wait for them to be done. Specifically, Dr. Doom, honestly.
Right?
I can't wait for the justice to be given to this character.
I saw someone trying to convince the world that Lena Headey would be a great Dr. Doom, to do like a gender swapped Dr. Doom. From Cersei from Game of Thrones, which I think would be pretty interesting. She was great in Judge Dredd.
I never thought about it on the gender swap tip. That'll be kind of interesting, man.
Did you see Judge Dredd? She was a fill-in in that, and she was really
I heard the movie was sick, but I never watched I caught the beginning and didn't see the rest. It looked nuts, man.
Absolutely watch it. It's what's his face there, who's everybody.
Yeah, he's like in every movie. Star Trek guy.
Who plays Bones in Star Trek.
Yeah, he's in Thor Ragnarok.
Come on, nerds.
Carl Urban,
thank you.
There we go.
Carl Urban. So that should be dope. All right.
I'm still waiting for the X-Men, Marvel. Still waiting for the X-Men.
It'll happen. It's coming soon.
Oh, wait up. Hold on. Cagen, what is up with Spider-Man 3, man?
Spider-Man 3.
Dude, we keep hearing news about everyone coming back and like what is going on, man?
I don't know, bro. It's
like, is it like a Spider-Verse thing like happening?
I
Like,
think it's going to be a Spider-Verse thing.
and if so, we need Miles in there. Who's gonna play Miles? Live action Miles?
Yeah, all I've really heard is that, all of the old Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire, and all of them are coming back for it.
But then I hear Jamie Foxx is coming back as Electro.
Oh, really?
Guy that played Doc Ock is coming back.
Yes, Andrew Molina. Yeah. I did hear about that.
So, dude, I'm like,
I didn't realize that had been confirmed. I heard it as like rumors at first, but I didn't realize that they're like, yeah, it's official. I thought it was just like a joke.
Oh man, maybe I felt I was a victim of one of the nerd thirst traps.
I definitely saw something about Albert Molina coming back. I didn't hear about Jamie Foxx, and I saw a lot of posts about like who they thought should play Miles Morales, but I never saw anything official about Miles Morales. But of course, he's got to be in it. Like if they do this thing and he's not in there, then
you can't do a Spider-Verse without Miles.
It's going to be rioting in the streets, and I'm going to be the one doing it.
But no, it's it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I think it's
from the sounds of it,
super dope. But so there's clearly a lot of stuff coming up. It's a good time to be a nerd. Lots of good stuff to see, and I'm excited about it. I just wish we could get dates for everything, so I don't have to just stay glued to my Twitter feed. But I also wanted.
Oh no, sorry. I just wanted to mention that I was surprised to see because I don't have Disney Plus. I had the trial for a little bit, and then I was just kind of over it because I had seen everything on there already. But I'm surprised to see that Children of Blood and Bone. I didn't know they acquired that. So on the one hand, like I read some of the book personally. I wasn't a huge fan of her writing style, but I would say that I'm definitely proud that her content was acquired by Disney of all things. Like they're pretty much the like Kraken of the entertainment industry. They own almost everything. So I think that that's pretty cool that they're the ones who got their hands on it. So it's going to be big since they have it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And they won't like just make a weak movie about it or whatever they're going to do. They'll give it the treatment that we hope it needs. And I mean, let's just hope that, that's opening up the door for other Black women authors who do, fantasy type stories to get those stories out there. If it's successful, that's what it'll mean. So I'm excited about that.
Listen, and on that note, I just read this that Disney, speaking of Disney just going all out, man, they have a partnership with an African-based animation studio recently.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm like, dude, Disney's just like, hey, let's do it all, baby.
Cracking up Hollywood.
and then the Frog Princess is getting her own series or something like that.
Yep. Yeah, I heard about
it's getting mad black at Disney, man.
Yeah, right. I can't remember the name of the series with the African
Tiana, I think her name.
Yeah,
I think the name of the series.
They named
simply her name.
Iyame or something like that.
Oh yeah,
something like that. I had it in my notes, but I couldn't find it. Anyway, but yeah, that's also really exciting. Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, the Black Panther effect, right? That they did this movie, it made millions of dollars. All of a sudden, Black stories are marketable. People want to see stories about Black people. Or people, non-white people even, so I think we're going to get, because there's also another thing they announced was Lin-Manuel Miranda is doing a series as well on, I can't remember exactly what it is.
I think it's, what is it? The Little Mermaid. I heard they're doing the live action for, I know he's doing the music for that.
Yes.
Him and Alan Petkin. I think it was the same guy who did the music for Hamilton with, but
oh, that's gonna be dope. That's gonna be so dope.
That's gonna be dope.
They made Ariel. I forget the singer's name. She was singer.
Her name is Halle Berry.
Yeah, like I keep wanting to call her
Halle Bailey.
Yeah, I want to call her Halle Berry. And I'm like,
Every time
I was like,
see her
what? Halle
name,
Berry's
like,
coming back? What?
Halle Berry? She's gonna be the Little Mermaid? That's dope.
Yeah, right. And I was like,
Old,
oh wait, no.
but yeah, that should also be dope. But he's also doing some sort of animated series that's for Disney Plus. That's but I can't remember what it was. But that should also be cool. I mean,
That guy's good. That guy's good.
yeah, he's good, and his music is always on point. But so should we move on to the discussion about Afrofantasy? I'm going to start with a couple of book recommendations that I pulled out here from my shelf of comics. So first, I have Niobe, which is written by Amandla Sternberg, who was played Rue in the Hunger Games, among other things. But she authored this book, and artwork is by Ashley Woods, among others. But it's a dope book, a story about a young woman who's in this fantasy realm. The artwork is out of control, but this is definitely one to check out. Niobe, She Is Life. I've recommended this one before by Greg Anderson Elise, a Haitian brother who does this story about Isnana, who he told me how to pronounce it, Isnana. And this one, he meets John Henry, the historical figure John Henry. So Isnana is the son of Anansi, the spider, and he's kind of a superhero kind of situation. And so this is an adventure where he meets John Henry, and it's dope. There's a bunch of books, but this is an especially good one in the fantasy realm. Crescent City Monsters. This is by Newton Lavoie. Art by Giancarlo Bernal. But this is a really dope story. I mean, amazing artwork, all in black and white, but really well rendered. It's about this guy who fights monsters in New Orleans and drives a hog, which is super dope. So this, well-dressed young man fights monsters. So super dope. Also in the fantasy genre. Here's one by a local artist, Michelle Abreu, who's part of the crew. Novengard has a lot of elves and stuff in it. It's definitely check this one out. You can get this one at Frugal Books on the Comics and Color rack. This is probably my favorite of the Afrofantasy books. Excellence by Brandon Thomas, artwork by Roxbury's Carrie Randolph. I always call him Roxbury's Carrie Randolph because he is from here, but he is an amazing artist. But this is like if Harry Potter was about Black folks who lived in the city and it was much more adult, is what this is like. It's just really, I mean, Carrie Randolph is a beast when it comes to the artwork. So everything in here is dope, but it's basically about, ruling families of Black magicians, and the son goes awry and all sorts of shenanigans ensue. But definitely check this out because it's really great. And that's all the book recommendations I have. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about Afrofantasy. On doing my research, it was a little bit hard to find, especially in comics. So those were the examples that I found. But most not a whole lot of Afrofantasy comics out there. There definitely was some more in animation that I found, characters, if not particularly stories about Black folks in magical situations. There's definitely characters in certain ones. Um, there was, a couple of characters to highlight. There was, well, this one's not animated, but in Witcher, there was that young man who played the elf. I don't know if anybody watch Witcher?
I think I watched the first episode. I can't remember because I know I read some of it and I really loved the writing. But I don't think I watched too much of the show.
Well,
So I don't know. I don't think I got up to anything about elves. I remember monsters, but I don't remember elves, so I don't think I watched too much of it.
Well, one thing that was interesting about Witcher, which is an interesting product because it started out as a book, then was a video game, then was a show, which is kind of not usually the order that they do. But it's a very it's a diverse world, right? There's actually black witches. One of the main bad guys is a woman who is a witch. There's this young man who's an elf. So there's a lot of different, not just the captain of the guard, although I think there is a captain of the guard who's a black man, which is kind of one of those tropes that you always see. Um, but it was actually a really diverse cast in this fantasy tale. So I liked it. I haven't read the book. I've only seen the show, but I thought it was very well done. Um, then there was in Castlevania. There was the have you any of you watched the Castlevania series on Netflix?
I got to see the new season.
It's dope. I mean, I watched it because I'm not only a fan of anime, but I played on my Nintendo, original Nintendo. I played Castlevania till my fingers bled because I loved that game. I think I did beat it eventually, but there is a character on there who is one of the villains, who is a forger, who is a brother, and he's a very, very interesting character. His main power set is to be able to bring people back to life as demons or monsters. So he's a really interesting character.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah,
I gotta check that out.
Definitely recommend. Castlevania is one of those hyper violent, super dope animes.
The animation is just
animation is dope.
It's gotten there, right? I remember the days where like, man, when are we gonna get on anime levels? And I feel like I don't know if it was the last Airbender. That was the maybe Batman the animated series. I don't know who to blame, but animation's finally, something
really
we can be proud of.
I mean, we're getting right. The American animation now is getting pretty close to anime. I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's as good, but it's getting pretty close.
That's actually because the shows are outsourced. So like Avatar,
true,
animated in Korea. Because like I don't want to like digress, but I don't know if you guys have heard of LaShawn Thomas. Yeah, so he's.
I was just gonna bring him up after you said that.
Yeah, he's an animator, character designer. He did the character design for Korra and the Boondocks. And one thing he was talking about in an interview is that here in America, the animation industry is very like adamant about sticking to its roots, about like the whole like simplified kind of drawings. It's not that we can't do it, it's that animation students aren't taught because it's not really seen as like American. So that's why whenever producers want a show that looks more anime, they go to Korea. I think partly because Korea is cheaper, their production costs are cheaper, and also because I think Japan is just kind of like slammed, like they pump out like 70 new shows a year. So like they wouldn't really have time to take on an American show. But yeah, that's why so many shows are getting that kind of look. Also, I think it's because my age group, we grew up with anime. Like that was like Saturday morning cartoons, and now we're the ones who are putting out shows. So now it's like, oh, I'm just gonna put out what I watched because that was great, and so that I think that's why also shows are kind of taking that visual turn.
And LaShawn Thomas also behind Cannon Busters on Netflix, and which I'm still waiting for season 2. LaShawn,
I hear Netflix. It's coming. Didn't he open a animation studio, like his own animation studio?
Yeah, he has his own studio, and he's based out of Tokyo now.
That's super.
His story is amazing. If you guys want, like, his story is amazing. Like him being in animation, LaShawn Thomas, him being in animation, then finding out all the fun parts of animation, like you said, was outsourced. So he's like, what am I doing here? I'm gonna go to where they actually animate. So he took trips to Korea, to Japan. Like that guy's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the major differences, and this is just a value judgment on my part, is that in other places they see animation as art, and here they see it as a commodity, right, to be sold and bought.
With commercials.
Yes, with commercials. But I think that you know, in Japan and Korea, they see it as art, right? So if it takes a little while longer to do it for it to look amazing, then it's worth it to them. Whereas here, it's like you get a month to do it and that's it,
Mhm.
right? We need it out. We need it making money for us. But hold on just a second. But yeah, okay. So other people I was thinking about in fantasy. Well, sorry. Somebody just sent me a message and I'm trying to respond to it. But feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
I would say for Afro fantasy, because we were talking about it like before we started. I was trying to look up different examples of Afro fantasy, at least like in books. I couldn't really find much, and I feel like it's because it's almost niche, like it's almost a niche genre, so it's kind of small, so there's not going to be a lot of examples. So like I can think like off the bat of like characters that are brown or yeah, I would say mostly brown. I wouldn't say that I know many fantasy characters that are like straight up black. Like, but I do know that sometimes like me and my friends, like we would adopt characters as black. Like my cousin and my brother swear that Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z is black. I was like,
of course. Oh, yeah.
I was like, but he's green and he's voiced by a white guy. And they're like, I don't care. He's black. And so there's that, and I know I absolutely adore Katara from from Avatar. She's probably like my favorite brown skinned fantasy character. And I know that there are some anime that also have explicitly black characters. Like I heard about this one show called I think it's called Michiko and Hachin, and it's about this I don't know if you guys know it, but it's about this girl who she's like a Latina, and she like escapes prison, and then there's this little girl who lives with her foster family. She's essentially Cinderella of the family, and these two, by some circumstance, they meet and they go on these misadventures while they're trying to avoid the feds because Michiko escaped from prison. So
it's a really great show and takes place in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
yeah.
wow, okay.
So like I think I watched a little bit of it because I had some time. I wasn't able to get through the whole episode, but I know that there's that. And then like you were saying I feel like it's more popular in books because I know there's Children of Blood and Bone, which got really big recently. And then I feel like it kind of like died down and now Disney has it. So okay, the hype is going to come back. And then there was like what I found out this year that the author of the Three Musketeers, which is like one of the biggest classics in modern history, was actually written by a man who is half black, which means he was all black. But
right.
so that was
oh yeah, we're claiming that. We're claiming all that. Three Musketeers. That's ours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty amazing. I was like, a swashbuckling story was written by a black guy. Like
I did not know that. I didn't know that.
Alexandre Dumas.
Mm-hmm.
Dumas was his name, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really good. Like, and I might be biased because I prefer classics, but I think that his writing style was definitely like ahead of his time. So I think that's a really, really cool book.
You know what else about black fantasy? I think the way we picture it, you think of knights, elves, Tolkien type of archetypes, and just the base thought is kind of European,
right?
So you already, like even as a black creator, you already kind of see, like, oh yeah, it's like, I guess it's not hard to do, but I guess growing up, that image is just replayed in your head and in front of you so often that when you're finally old enough to cook up your own story, you're not really thinking, although it would be awesome, an all black cast of knights and witches and.
Well, I think that you're absolutely right, Jam, that we have this kind of European idea of fantasy that's kind of stuck in our heads. But if you look at like African mythology, for instance, it's all that's Afrofantasy in and of itself. Like all those stories and gods and orishas and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff is all, fantasy
Mhm.
with people with powers and magic and all that stuff. So I think that we do get caught up in elves and witches and giants and orcs and all that stuff, but there's so much more. And and there's, I'm sure there's, different fantasy stories that come from the Caribbean or, any other color, India, or, I'm sure they all have their own versions of fantasy. And
When
I
I
mean,
started playing D&D, I noticed that like Eurocentrism, like within like
Mhm.
that whole game. And when I started playing, I was like, I'm going to start just borrowing from all sorts of cultures, not just European.
Yeah.
So I think I'd like to see even more of that, like in stories. So yeah, but the very good point. It's Eurocentric.
yeah, and I think as Black folks and people of color, we have a rich,
Yeah.
stories and legends and myths and all this stuff that they're just not as well known. They don't get out there as much. I mean, Children of Blood and Bone, for instance,
Mhm.
they talk about orishas and stuff like that in there. So that's African-based mythology.
I'm borderline ashamed of all the my wife has put me on to so much of like African, because we're coming up with an idea of our own to piece together into a little, graphic novel. So we went back and dived into, she was showing me like Anansi, the spider god, and like almost like you could kind of see the parallels. Like, dude, did Marvel like rip us off? You seeing guys like
Absolutely.
Thor, but like African, Wolverine, but African, like you can see
Well,
the
I don't
parallels.
think Marvel ripped us off. I think that the Greeks,
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
ripped us off. Or
Because I don't want to hate Marvel, so I don't want to hate Marvel. That'll just tear me apart. So I can't.
Taking what they're given, and I'm not saying Marvel is perfect, but
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, Luke Cage was a jive sucker back in the day.
I know, right? Sweet Christmas. Yeah, they certainly aren't without their issues, but that Marvel is definitely working hard, as is Disney, to try to dispel some of the things,
clean some things up,
make up for some of the things they did in the past. You know what I mean? Because a Disney, whew, don't take Disney's back story, because Walt Disney was a racist. I'll just put it out there.
Point blank, the end.
Point blank, he was a racist. But what you gonna do? He made some great stuff, and here we are today, getting some of the benefits from that. But yeah, so there is, I think there is a lot of potential for Afrofantasy or more Afrofantasy stories making it out into the mainstream, especially now that we have this general belief that Black stories can make money and are marketable. So I think I hope we're going to see more of this sort of thing happening in the future.
I would think that we would, especially, I keep going back to Children of Blood and Bone just because it was so marketed and hyped when it first came out, that I think even that alone will like be an attention grabber for people to be like, oh wow, there's actually like Afro fantasy stuff. There's like mythology and African culture. That's interesting. Let's look more into that, and we might see more stories like that. Which I think, and this just kind of gets into the whole idea of making new content, because like I noticed on that slide for Disney they released a lot of Star Wars content. I watched the movies for Star Wars, like episodes 1 through 6 or whatever. What did I do? Episodes 4 through 6, and then I watched 1 through 3. However they did it. So I appreciate that, but I feel like at this point, like I know a lot of people love The Mandalorian. I know you guys like really into it, and like the Clone Wars and Anakin and Obi-Wan and all this stuff, and it's like that's all great. Can we get something new? And I think that also kind of ties into the whole idea of this because then it's kind of like the whole genre of fantasy generally gets kind of monopolized, because then we have, just as we have like all this Star Wars stuff coming out, all this stuff with Marvel, all this stuff with DC, it's like DC, Marvel, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, DC, Marvel, DC, Marvel, and like it's kind of like the same. And then also we have fantasy, knights, soldiers, knights, soldiers, soldiers, magic, witches. I will admit that I do that in my own stories. My stories are heavily inspired by Eurocentric fantasy genres, because that's what I saw growing up, even in Japanese video games. But I mean, I'm not gonna like be mad at myself. That's all I had.
Yeah. No,
And so I think that it's getting to a point where I think people are just going to want to see stuff that's just different, and not different like progressive different, just like different, like just different backgrounds, different characters, just more originality. And I think that that's something that is just gonna be more desired amongst the people. So.
I totally agree. I think that there is going to be a desire for something new, and there's a space for it. There's this space kind of being developed for it now. So I would like to think, Myranda, that we're, in the upcoming couple of years, we're going to see a lot more stories from other countries, some other cultures that, are made into larger budget blockbuster type stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Especially because like you can find shows. I know Netflix gets a bunch of shows from like overseas and stuff, but you can find shows online. Like people have been watching anime online forever. And then there's K-dramas, and then there's foreign films that come from like Bollywood or like all these other places. And you can find those online.
Yeah.
So eventually it's gonna get to the point where they're just gonna be like, you know what, let's just put it in the theater, because if we don't put it there, people are gonna find it anyway. So what's the point?
What I really like about the conversation is also, I wanted to add, there is this huge paradox. A lot of people want the same thing, but they want something different. So we get like, it seems like there's a lose-lose situation. Sometimes they complain, I don't want a remake, but then we try something new and there's a complaint about, well, this is something I don't want. So it's like, we have to really make sure, it's like, it's like, we have to really put, oh my God, sorry.
I got you.
Take your time.
Okay, I feel like because we tend to cater to a very small audience, and now we're starting to see that there are other audiences out there that can appreciate some of the work. And as also, because when I started getting into games and comics, and like I grew up on cartoons first, and then I got into video games a little bit later. And when I first transitioned into like, for example, Final Fantasy was a really good, a very good game to learn from because of the way they constructed their worlds. I love the world of Spira, even though they deal with a disastrous monster that pops up anywhere, because of the biodiversity. Like, there are so many people in that world that are different colors, different shades, different races. And then same in Final Fantasy 12, the world of Ivalice, where one of the characters, Fran, even though she's a Vera, she's dark skinned. She is kind of she's seen as, the Vera are seen as beautiful, but they are also a matriarchal kind of society. So you kind of technically see a society that is run by Black women that are environmental. And then on top of that, Final Fantasy 13, one of the, I liked the character Saz, who is really a black man. Even though there's this huge issue that apparently they can't tell the difference between Lionel Richie and Martin Lawrence. Yeah, because that's what the designer said. He based it off Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie does not look like that. That's Martin Lawrence. And even before that, with Final Fantasy VI, with General Leo, who was the sympathetic character of the Gestalt Empire, and of course, I think because of the whole thing about the way American media portrays Black people, it also trickles down to other. Yeah. So you see, so with that, you get a little bit of, there's an edge and a coolness with Black people, but there's also a fear, and that was really how. And I think with Japan and certain creators, they're starting to see something different, they try to explore different things. And I'm like, we have to try new things. We have to try new avenues. We have to highlight more people. We can't have the same character over and over again because it causes stagnation.
Agreed. I think that's a very good point, Reggie. And something that came up, I think we got to mention here, and it's completely not part of this conversation, but that Funimation and Crunchyroll, the Funimation bought Crunchyroll, or Crunchyroll bought Funimation. So now they have the largest collection of anime in the United States outside of Japan in this collection.
Holy smokes. Okay.
Yeah. So hopefully that means more access to the shows that are hard to get.
Yeah, and I know Crunchyroll I don't know if they started doing this recently, but I don't know how many of you guys have the Webtoon app, but Crunchyroll started to adapt content from Webtoon, and they started to make their own anime off of it. So that's going to add even more diversity to the industry, because now it's like, okay, we're getting more anime, but we're getting it from not just Japanese creators. We're getting it from people who are from the US, from Spain, from Brazil, from all these other places. And I think that's going to add to the diversity of the industry. And then to go back to what Reggie mentioned earlier about, like, people want something new, but then we give them something new and they freak out and it's not enough. And what do we do? And I think that kind of boils down to creating content that that one, you believe in, for one thing, like you just enjoy the story for yourself. And then two, that speaks to the heart, the human heart in some way, to get people to connect to the story, because those are the most timeless stories, and that's why they get rehashed, because they're so relatable in some way. And each generation of people that comes along is like, oh, this generation missed it, let's retell it to them. And it's cute in one sense, because it's kind of like, the grandpa telling his kids, hey, I want to tell you about a story of when I was in the woods, and the parents are like, oh, not this again, and the kid's like, wow, because he's never seen it before. And but it just gets to the point where you have to kind of like put yourself out there, put your story out there, and let it be original in whatever capacity you want it to be that through like what Final Fantasy does, where they just have a bunch of diverse characters and monsters that differ based on the environment, or giant horse chickens, or all this other stuff. So I think that when it comes to Afro fantasy, I think we are what's the word I want to use? We have an advantage in the sense that we have a lot more to use and a lot more to blend. So it's like we can use, like, I don't think that we need to knock Eurocentric fantasy, because that's a genre of fantasy. And then, we have that. And then we also have Afro fantasy, African mythology and stuff. And then you also have your own imagination. And I think that you can put all of those things together. Like, that's something that I did in my series, like not to like shamelessly plug, but to shamelessly plug.
Plug away.
Gotta check it out. Gotta check it out.
The Avat Prince. One thing that I did, because I have the Eurocentric fantasy idea of like, the Empire, the Arcanian Empire is heavily inspired by the Roman Empire. And then of course there's the whole idea of like knights and soldiers and witches and magic and all this stuff. And then we have stuff with like African soothsayers, and they're kind of like really some of the twisted things that they do. And then my own imagination, because of all the different video games that I played growing up, and monsters and creatures and magic, and I'm going to call it this, and this is how the magic system is going to work, because I think that because Black people are so creative generally, just like in music and dance and all of these other areas, you can really call upon that creativity again, to just create something new and original. And then if somebody's like, and if a bunch of people are like, I don't like this, well, then there's going to be a bunch of other people who are going to be like, I really like this, because it's new and it's different. And I think that sometimes you kind of have to take a risk and just put your stuff out there, like whatever kind of content you're trying to make. And being a Black creative, your Blackness is going to get into it by default. I don't know if that sentence sounded strange or not, but I'm sure you guys know what I mean.
No, I dig it. I dig it.
Absolutely. You tell the stories you know.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I'm not sure if it's cheating. I remember watching an interview with Jaleel White, who played Steve Urkel, famous for being Steve Urkel. And Jaleel said that everyone thought this was some breakthrough performance, and, the era of Steve Urkel began. And if you guys weren't around at the time, it was huge. Steve Urkel was a big deal back in the day. And he said all he was really doing was an impression of a Saturday Night Live character. I can't remember the name of the character.
Ed Grimley.
It was like, yes, Ed Grimley. It was
Short.
Ed Grimley.
Yeah.
Martin Short, Ed Grimley. He said he was doing that impression. And he said the only reason he think it went big is because he was Black.
Right.
And he was doing a Ned Grimley, and it just kind of took everyone off.
No one had ever seen it before.
And sometimes just that alone is enough where something different begins to grow out of it, like where sometimes that's all it takes. Just your flavor on top of something that, like, imagine a Final Fantasy that was truly all Black. That would be nuts. Dude, I'll buy like 10 copies. Yeah. Imagine Street Fighter.
My gosh.
Imagine Street Fighter 6 all Black. I'll lose my mind. Like, yo, what is going on?
There is actually, it's not like Street Fighter, but out there is Capoeira Fighter, which is a predominantly Black, Latino characters that they fight using capoeira. I mean, it's done by a white guy, but it was based off of his time learning capoeira in Brazil. The guy who created the game went on to a Robot Unicorn Attack, which was
that was a very popular game.
I remember that game. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I gotta check that out. I was not aware.
Yeah, and I liked it. It was a nice, fun game to play when I was in high school. So there was like attempts, but it's a web game.
Yeah.
See, I'm a big fighting game head, so I got to check that out, man.
Well, let's not forget about the Def Jam game where you beat the rappers. I just had to throw that out there. But
Cagen, listen, Cagen, just on that note, I got a new job, right? I'm working at Harmonix Studio.
Okay.
Those are the guys that made Rock Band and Guitar Hero and all that jazz.
Oh, yeah.
I can't say too much about it because I signed the NDA and all that stuff. The game we're working on is for the culture, man.
Oh man.
I just can't wait. I can't wait to be able to share it here on Comics in Color, man.
That's man. Well, when you can, you let me know because we will do something, talk about that because that sounds awesome. But we also need to move on so that we can talk to Myranda about her work. I'm very excited to hear more about it. So
it's funny, I forgot. I thought we were just going to keep
We totally could. But I want to give you a chance to talk about your work because it's amazing. So let me introduce Myranda. Myranda Victoria Peterson is an author illustrator with a bachelor's degree in fine arts from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. A self-taught artist, her art is heavily inspired by anime and Japanese pop culture. Passionate about storytelling, it's both visual and literary forms. Myranda currently writes and illustrates and independently publishes her own books for children and young adults. She creates original content that is for the youth today with themes of generosity, courage, justice, and companionship and hope. So let's, even though we've already been talking, let's welcome Myranda.
Hello.
Nice to have you here. So I'm going to start out with the first question. What got you interested in doing comics?
I would say it was actually, I don't know if you guys know, because it was kind of like a girly girl series. It was Witch, Witch. It was I think it was an Italian graphic novel series, and then it got adapted as like a half graphic novel, half book, half like novel. And the artwork, I follow the artist on Instagram. His name is Alessandro Barbucci. I could be saying that wrong, but I know his first name is Alessandro. And I remember loving his art. And so I loved the book series. By the time I found it, I was already interested in writing and illustrating my own books because I had started illustrating or drawing when I was like 11. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. So I already had a passion for telling stories. But when I went to write my first published series, the Avat Prince, I started thinking about, how do I want to tell this story? Because I was illustrating it, but when I showed it to people off the bat assumed that the main character would always be 11 years old, because that's the story starts with Brent as an 11-year-old. And I was like, well, he ages like partway through the story. By the end of volume 4, he's 18, or he's 17, then 18. So I was like, how do I let people know in the beginning that this isn't a story about a little boy? And that's when I got the idea. I was like, what if I do an intro comic like the Witch series? Because what they did, they took for like the first book, or for every book, what they would do is they would take an insert from the graphic novel and put that at the beginning of the book, just to like kind of capture kids' attention. And then they would start the first chapter and you would like read it like a regular book, and they'd have like illustrations. You get to the end of the book and there's another comic insert. So I was like, what if I did it like that? And that's how I got the idea to start doing comics in my books. So
That's very cool. So it's like the intro is the comic and the outro is the comic, but in between is a novel.
yes, and then there's like full page illustrations throughout, it's like sprinkled throughout.
Okay, that's very cool. So have you always drawn? Have you
Yeah,
always
so
illustrated?
so when I was 11, I saw my friend drawing Sailor Moon characters on the blacktop at recess. And I asked her, I was like, hey, like, can you teach me? Because she would do it like every day. And her name was Sally, and everyone would be like, hey, where's Sally? She's over there drawing pictures again. So I asked her like, hey, can you teach me how to draw? And she did. She taught me how to draw like the basic anime, like draw the circle, and you do the line, you do this, and then you put the eyes there, and bangs can be like this, that, and the other. And she just taught me the basics. And then after that, I kind of took off on my own. And I became like more self-taught. So like I would just kind of like draw. I would look at other artists. And it was definitely the Zelda series that I would say inspired my art a lot, because when going back to what we were talking about before about like being original, I would always look at other artists and I'd be like, there's a lot of artists that do this technique, so I'm purposely not going to teach myself how to do that, so I don't join their bandwagon. And there was also a point where in high school we had a substitute teacher. I remember he was a Black teacher, and this is interesting because, and this just goes to show that like you can never discount anyone in your life, like no matter how long they're in it, or like even for you yourself, like you could be like that one person that like totally shifts someone's life with one sentence. And so he saw me drawing one day, because at the time I was just like sketching like basic anime characters. And then he was like, a lot of people do that style. Like maybe you should try to like develop your own. And at first, like I think I was like 15 or something. So I was upset at first. I was like, how dare you? But then I thought about it and I was like, he's kind of got a point, because I already kind of understand that a lot of people draw the same way and I don't want my art to like be the same. So that was kind of like what led me to start getting into drawing real people and incorporating that style into my own art. And then I started seeing games like Final Fantasy, and I got into semi-realism and the Legend of Zelda series, and I appreciated how Nintendo has a very distinct art style for their games, and they're not like hyper realism like a lot of other game studios. So I kind of like took inspiration from that. And then that's how I kind of started to develop my own art style, because I wanted people to be able to look at my art and be like, I know who did that. So yeah, so that's kind of like how it all went down.
Very interesting. I think that I've heard before that like Sailor Moon is a bit of a gateway drug, right? A lot of people get into Sailor Moon or drawing Sailor Moon, and that's how they get into anime or doing art. I think
Yeah,
that's a story I've heard a couple of times. But
I agree.
that's
Yeah.
super cool, and I like that you like, in the old days, what they would do, they'd have apprentices, right? They would spend their time copying the master's works, and then they would develop their own style afterwards. So I think that's a very good way to get into creating your own style, is learn another person's first and then translate it into your own kind of stuff. That's
Yeah,
cool.
definitely. Mm-hmm.
Cool story. So how does and we got into this a little bit, but how does your own life affect your storytelling and your writing work?
I would say the biggest impact that my own life has, there's two. One is my dad always taught me that when you're writing, it has to come from your heart. Like anything that's in you is going to come out in what you create. That's just a given. That's a default. And he also said that you should draw from the real world and put that into your story, because then that makes it more real. Because of course when you're writing fiction or fantasy, you want to have that element of like being original and being like different, but you still have to bring it home in some way so that people can still like connect. Like one of my friends who was reading when she was reading the first volume, she texted me and she was like, I never thought that I would connect to a half Avat, half Arcanian blue-haired boy from a fantasy story, but I do. And I was like, that's cool.
That's a great compliment.
Yeah, so I was pretty excited to hear that, because it means that I've been doing my job, which is to create something that has that realism in it, but still has that element of like newness and like something that can just kind of like reach out and just kind of pull people in. And then I would say that the second impact my life has is that I travel a lot, or I traveled past stupid pandemic, but but I like growing up, for one thing, when I was in elementary school, I was always surrounded by Asians. Like all of my friends were Vietnamese or Chinese, and it got to the point where they accepted me. They were like, "You're an honorary Asian as of today." It's like they were like, "You have yellow undertones. You can be one of us." I was like, "What?" So I was like the honorary Asian in grade school, and then middle school had a lot of Asian friends. High school, I had a lot of like Latino and Latina and Black friends. And then I got to college, and that's when I started to travel a lot. So growing up, I would always see people who just looked different and just had different cultures. And so I think that's definitely something that I incorporate into my writing, which is why my characters, even my Black characters, look so not Black because it's typically because of their hair colors. Like I have main character of the Bad Prince, who has blue hair, and then I have my other character, Henry, of my steampunk novel that's coming out in the spring. But the thing about Henry too is that I actually based his design off of the Melanesian people, who are a tribe of Black people. I forget where their island is located. I would have to look it up again, but they're an island of Black people who have naturally blonde hair, and it's a genetic difference. Like it's genetically different from what makes a white person's hair blonde. So like that's like original blonde hair. So
wow.
that's also, yeah, right. That's like, I was like, that's so cool.
Super cool.
And my dad has albinism. So he has green hair, pale skin, and yellow hair. Green eyes. Wow, green eyes.
Hey, if your dad has green hair, we're not here to judge him. Wear that green hair.
he has green eyes, yellow hair. And so growing up seeing people who have all of these different physical attributes, that's definitely something that I put into my books, which is why I don't make characters that look specifically one ethnicity or another. Just because growing up, that just wasn't my reality. I saw people who looked all kinds of ways, mixed, not mixed, this ethnicity, this ethnic background. So my background is very diverse. So I would say that and my dad's advice are definitely the things that make their way into my writing.
Cool. So of the places you've traveled, did any of them like appear? Did you use them as for the basis of any of the worlds you've created? Or you just
I would say that I got a lot of inspiration when I was in South Korea. That was the first place I went to because I studied abroad. And so when I went to South Korea, I went to Gyeongbokgung Palace, which is like, it's in the capital of Seoul. And it's where the emperor used to live when they had emperors. And I would say that definitely became inspiration for the Emperor's Palace in the Avat Prince. And also some other details about the story that I feel like I can't reveal just yet because it would be a spoiler.
No spoilers.
But definitely some cultural inspirations as well. So I would say I got that. And then I've also been to Europe. So I got a lot of inspiration just from seeing like the Highlands in Scotland and being able to see like all that nature and all those mountains and stuff. And that kind of helped me develop the idea for the valley that Brent lives in, his village. It's like this really pretty quaint village in the middle of this beautiful valley that I just imagine to be inspired by European landscape and stuff. So that's another inspiration.
Interesting. I love it. Like bringing the whole world into your stories almost.
Yeah.
Very cool. So as we are here in Comics in Color and we're about creating, right, and process. So can you walk us through kind of your process for creating your stories from like idea to publish?
Okay. All right. I will start with the Avat Prince, because the thing is, it kind of snowballed into this huge project. When I first started writing it, it was supposed to be a spin-off for a fan fiction that I had written in high school. That was just supposed to be like a little backstory for Brent because Brent was in this fan fiction. And I was like, that's gonna be 5 chapters long. It's no big deal. Fast forward and now I'm on like I'm writing right now, volume 10.
Oh my God.
Like, how did this happen? But so I would say that with the Avat Prince, it was kind of like it was very, I wouldn't say it was kind of organic. It was a bit of a go with the flow kind of thing for that project. And kind of like I came up with like ideas like as I went, and I think I was kind of developing my own process as I did it. I would say for another project, my steampunk one that I have coming out in the spring, that one was a lot more straightforward in the sense that like I had like a really loose idea of what I wanted, and I prayed about it a lot, and then I got the idea for the whole story in one day, and I outlined it, and then I just went through and I just like pretty much translated each bullet point into a chapter. And so now the entire book is like set aside. Now I'm moving into conceptual art. So that that includes getting the characters' faces out of my head and pretty much like hashing out like what I want them to look like. I usually start with the eyes first because I feel like that's really what brings a whole character's face together is the eye shape. And I always try to make sure that one character's eyes don't look like another character's eyes because I don't want to fall into that whole same face syndrome that a lot of artists do.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so like
I know that well.
yeah, so I try to focus on that, and then from there I move into facial structure and nose and mouth, and then I figure out the hair. And like I always have like a really like vague idea of what I want them to look like, and sometimes if I'm losing the vision, I'll go back to the story and be like, okay, how did I describe this person again? And I'll kind of use that as like my guide, and then I'll move into designing their outfit. And then I go into reference sheets and different color ideas. And that's only if I don't know what I want their colors to look like for the Avat prints, for the costumes in that one, when I designed the outfits, I had to go back and like recolor them like 5 or 6 times. Like I made like 6 or 7 copies of each costume, and I would just go with colored pencils, be like, do I like this combo? No, I don't like that one. Do I like this combo? That doesn't look right either. And I would just kind of like go through it, and then I make my reference sheet. I used to do it traditionally, but now I do it digitally because I have a tablet. And so after I make the reference sheet, then I move into thumbnailing the illustrations. So what I do first is I thumbnail the introduction comic. And then after that, I sketch it digitally, and then I move into coloring, and I'll go back to my reference sheet multiple times in order to make sure that the bases for the characters are like consistent across the panels and across all the illustrations, because I don't want variation. And then I finish those, and then I format the book. I format it myself using InDesign, and then I'll go through and then I'll put in the comic, I'll put in the story, and then I'll be like, okay, now what scenes do I want to illustrate specifically? And then I'll go in and I'll just scroll through, be like, okay, this looks like a good spot to put in an illustration. It's been a few pages. So I'll go in, I'll be like, this paragraph. I'll take that, and then I'll just go and sketch out some ideas on how to illustrate that scene. And then I will thumbnail it, digitally sketch it, color it, put it into the book, and then move on to the next interior illustration, and kind of like rinse, lather, repeat until the project's done. And then I'll put in an outro comic, project's done, close the book, next project. and then just kind of like, it just repeats after that.
Gotcha. So you have the whole thing written before you start any artwork.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you mentioned you had a bullet list that you used to write from. So you start your process by bulleting out the actions or something in the story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did that definitely for the steampunk one. For the Avat prints, once I started to get a handle, my friend kind of describes my writing process as like, I feel like you're trying to tame a wild horse and you're not doing a good job. Just like, thanks. But
just holding on for dear life.
Yeah, that's how it feels sometimes. So once I kind of got, the Avat prints to like kind of like reined it in, once I started to see where I wanted to go, then I went in and I just kind of outlined the entire series. There are some things that are going to end up changing, because when I first outlined it, there were some things that were kind of so far out that they were kind of like really loosely outlined. But as I get closer to those points, I start to draw out all of the details and kind of like, juice it a little bit. And so I bullet those, and then I kind of, when I go into write, I'll keep it off to the side, and then I'll have the actual document open, and I'll just be like writing it out. And then I think I mentioned to you before, I really like taking a lot of cues from different shows, like Arrow, DC Comics. Yeah, that's DC.
Yeah, DC.
DC or Marvel. But yeah, that's DC. On the CW, I did get to try to watch seasons 4 through, I think they're up to 8. I think it finished on 8. And I really like the first 3 seasons the most. So I'm actually going back and I'm rewatching the first 3 seasons, because I feel like the writers had, like, I really love their pacing and their dialogue. So I try to take a lot of cues from stuff like that, from like stories that are a bit like, that can be kind of like dark and moody. Just because I like that kind of style of writing. I like grit. Mm-hmm. I'm not really like a fluff kind of reader. I need substance. I need something to make me go, Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
So
That moment.
yeah, definitely. So I would say that's how my process plays out. I try really hard to set myself up for success, so to speak. So yeah, I would say that's definitely the process that I go through.
So your artwork is 100% digital at this point?
Yeah, at this point, I actually really miss painting with gouache. Like sometimes I'm staring at my tablet and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
But I just have so many things that I want to keep up with, because like I have a newsletter that I send out, and like I say, this is my deadline, and I'm like, well, I'm not changing it, so I have to stick with it and make sure that I get everything done on time. And then sometimes I get commissions also, because I take commissions, and then I have those deadlines to keep up with. So a lot of my stuff is digital right now. When I do my like initial conceptual drawings, like my thumbnailing and figuring out character details and stuff, that I do traditionally, just because I mean, for one thing, it's a bit more relaxing. It's not as stressful to like figure it out like just with a pencil and paper.
Right.
So
It's definitely, the digital process is so much faster and more efficient, but
yeah.
there's definitely, I find there's something missing about the pencil to paper, the pen to paper kind of experience. I
Yeah.
do find myself missing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's like I don't know if it has to do with, because I know like when you're writing pen to paper, generally that actually helps with memory. Like if whatever you're writing, you'll memorize it better if you're actually writing it. Um, so I don't know if it has something to do with that, or like just the organic feeling of just like I actually feel like an artist because I'm drawing this on a piece of paper and I don't have technology to help me fix my mistakes.
Yeah.
So I think that might also be part of it too. But
I think so, and I think you're right. It makes you more creative, because I mostly, like, when I write my stuff or conceptualize it, I do it with pencil and paper instead of doing it on my tablet, because it flows easier for some reason. I don't know. There's something about the creative process and having that pen in your hand that I think it makes a big difference. But so what tablet do you use?
I have an XP Pen Artist 16. I actually discovered XP Pen when, for my last semester, I studied in LA, and the XP Pen people were doing a panel or like some kind of a demo, and our teachers told us about it, and they were like, yeah, it's like some tablet company, they're a competitor to Wacom. And I was like, that sounds cool. And I went in and they were like, yeah, this huge tablet, it's just $400. I was like, wow, take my money. So
it costs like 3 times as much.
yeah, like usually, like the size that I have, the 16-inch, for a Wacom, it's like over $1,000. So when they were like, yeah, it's just $400, I was like, yes, please.
Yeah, you can't beat that. I've heard good
Yeah.
things about the XP Pen tablets.
Yeah, definitely. I highly recommend it. I think there are some people who started off with Wacom and then they moved to XP and they have complaints. And I think that's because there are certain things about Wacom that they're just more used to, or like the Cintiq tablet.
Right.
That the XP doesn't do. That's just like a technical difference. So like for me, for someone who never had a tablet before, the only tablet I had ever tried was the Apple, was the iPad Pencil, and then there was the Wacom tablet where it doesn't have a screen. It's just the one that you just draw on. You have to look at the computer.
Yes,
I hate
those
that.
are difficult to
Yeah,
use.
those are bad. Whoever came up with that, it's like you just slap them.
Who thought that was a good idea?
Yeah. Like, how am I supposed to draw without looking? Like it was just.
I end up mastering it after, but it took me like a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
the
learning curve.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't do it, because at the time I was doing a commission for my pastor, and she was saying they wanted it to be done digitally, so that if I needed to fix something, that I could just fix it, as opposed to having to like redraw everything, because I was doing watercolor at the time. And so they had let me use this. They got like this giant tablet that I was able to use for a bit, and they're like, do you like it? And I was like, it's not that I don't, it's just that if you really wanted me to finish this project like before the end of the like next 3 months, I wouldn't be able to.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah. So
Gotcha. Cool. So, who influences you? Who's your greatest influence on your storytelling?
my storytelling. I would say, technically speaking, I get a lot of inspiration from, I picked up a lot of J.K. Rowling's nuances. I didn't know that until I went back and I reread some of Harry Potter, and I was like, why does this sound
So familiar.
I was just like, whoa. So I picked up a lot of cues from her. I also got a lot of inspiration. I get a lot of inspiration from video games because I feel like those are the most engaging forms of fantasy that are available today. So I really love The Legend of Zelda. I started playing that when I was like 6. I picked up Ocarina of Time at GameStop. I remember this like still like the exact, like I don't remember the exact day, but I remember the exact moment I went. They had like those bins, those like clearance bins or whatever of the N64 games. You just go through and just like kind of like scroll and like pick out which one you want. And I saw The Legend of Zelda and I saw the sword and shield. I was like, that looks cool. And so I was like, hey Dad, I want this one. So, you know,
Even mentioning an N64 is it's a throwback.
I know. Oh my gosh. I honestly, I loved the N64. So I started with that, and then I got into Majora's Mask and all those. I didn't really get into things like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy until I would say like the latter years of high school. But I would say the art style definitely started to influence me in that. And I got a lot of cues in understanding, like I kind of call it, like, for all the chaos that Kingdom Hearts storyline is, I feel like it's very, it's like poetic in a way. Like the writer Tetsuya Nomura, he has this way of being poetic with the way he tells his stories. I don't know what other word to use, but if you play his games, I see Jamal nodding, so I'm assuming you play some of his games. You play Kingdom Hearts or anything like that.
Listen, Kingdom Hearts, I've only played 1 and 2. But 2 is one of those games that, like, I love so much I don't even talk about it. It's just like it melted within my soul and stayed there. And
I would agree. Yeah.
I gotta ask you, because you play a lot of, you said you played a lot of Kingdom Hearts. In Kingdom Hearts 2, and please forgive me if I'm alienating anyone else. In Kingdom Hearts 2, there's a mechanic where you could kind of switch styles, you know, with Sora.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if this just happened to me, but so you're switching styles, you're fighting the Heartless, you're switching styles, and then I press switch again, and he turned into this like,
into the Heartless, right?
Dude, I'm like, what was that, man? And it never happened again. And I didn't know who to talk to about it. Like, dude, what was that? It never happened again. And I was like, to this day, I'm like, and I'm almost afraid to look it up. Like, I just let it be. Like, I just let it exist. That happened one day.
Oh man, that's hilarious because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, it blew my mind.
I was like, yo, what happened?
Yeah,
Did it break?
I like looked around the room. I'm even though I'm the only one there. I'm like, dude, that was kind of creepy, man. What was?
Yeah,
his whole fighting style changed. He was all like scrappy.
Reggie's giving you some answers here on the chat.
Hit me,
Reggie, hop in there, buddy. Just say it.
So I don't remember because I played Kingdom Hearts 2 as
please
well.
tell me, Reggie.
That's the anti-form. So that's a mechanic where it kind of punishes you for using the other forms too much.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
See,
Yeah.
Joke's on them because I enjoyed that form. I was like, dude, how do I get that back, man? That was awesome.
Yeah,
so it's basically using it too much.
Okay.
Because
that makes sense now.
I thought it was because like if you transform too close to a Heartless, it's like they merge, like,
and it kind of like
or something. But I remember that. But I feel like Nomura, he can be very poetic. He brings things full circle. So with Kingdom Hearts, I feel like honestly that series could have ended with 2. There was 1, there was Chain of Memories, and there was 2.
That's what I was gonna say. 2, it was so satisfying. Like,
yeah, like
everything about it.
everything came full circle.
Yeah.
So that was something else that I learned, where it's like, if you have these open plot points and these issues, you have to bring it back at the end. Otherwise the ending falls apart and nobody will like your story, because an ending can make or break a story. And so I try to pick up some of his cues in his storytelling. Sometimes it's a little hard though, because it's just like, because sometimes there's just stuff, because I played the whole series up through 3. And honestly, by 3, it was like he still had that poeticism, but it was just like there were so many things that happened, and I was just like, wait, what?
Listen, I even look at 3 now, and like I know damn well I want to pick it up, but I just like
Mm-hmm.
I got my Street Fighter and Overwatch. I'll be all right.
It's wild that some of like video games have become this genre for storytelling that's just exploded, right? I mean, video games used to be, the story was you go from here to here and you jump over some stuff on the way and maybe you rescue a princess or something. And now it's like these amazing backstories that get turned into movies. And I mean, they're basically movies now that you can play. It's wild. And obviously, everybody's home assignment is to go play Kingdom Hearts, because it sounds like a lot of fun. I haven't played it, but I would like to get into it. But moving on there, I'd just like to ask you, Myranda, what got you interested in doing, young adult fantasy as a genre?
I feel like I fell into it because, but I also think it had a lot to do with my first grade teacher. She was literally the best first grade teacher anybody could have ever had. Like, I wish she was everyone's first grade teacher. She was amazing. But she would take it, I think like once a week, she would sit us down in like this carpet, like in a corner of the classroom, and she would read one chapter from a chapter book to us. And I think that's how I got into books originally. And so she would read like Magic Treehouse. She would read all these different books. She would, and then she had like and then my third grade teacher had a lot of bins of books. So that's when I got into Harry Potter. And then and then there was Aragon. I also read the Aragon series, or Inheritance, whatever that's called. And so that's when I started to just be interested in storytelling. And then also at the same time, I was playing all these different video games, and those were very story driven. And so I just got attached to stories, to the point where now if I play a video game, I am playing for the story. Like, other people might be like, hey, I want to like go farm and level grind until I'm level 100. And I'm like, why? so
Agreed.
Yeah, so I just got into stories very early. And then because I was so young, anything that I wrote would just fit into the category of like children's or young adult, because my imagination was already so active. So I think that's really how I got into it. So, because it just kind of like, it just sort of happened.
So you were
interesting.
a young adult when you started writing stories.
Yeah, pretty much. So, and I think it's interesting too, because most of my relatives, I have a very artistic family, but most of my relatives are musicians. But I found out not long after my grandfather on my father's side, after he had passed away, this was years ago, they gave me this binder full of his short stories. And I was like, so I might have also gotten it from my grandpa.
Wow. That's awesome. So you come from a musical family, an artistic family, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
That is super cool. Well, we are close to out of time. This has been a really great conversation, but I wanted to ask you the last question, which is, what can we do to make sure that diverse voices and stories are heard and represented in comics and literature?
I think that it boils down to a few different things. I mean, first, I think that Blacks and any diverse voice needs to be encouraged to know that whatever idea you have, you should write it, not just for the sake of other people reading it, but just to do it. Because I mean, I kind of see it as like, it's gonna be a really weird analogy, but it's like if you're like if you really need to go to the bathroom, you should really just go. And it's like, if you
Yes, you're right. That was a weird analogy. But I get it.
But I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from. You have like
do.
the idea inside of you. You should just let it out, because if you don't, you might
Make a mess.
Right all over your pants.
Yeah, so it's like, I would say if you have the idea, you should definitely just let it out, because it needs to come into the open. You shouldn't keep it to yourself. And then after that, then it gets into sharing it. So now it's like, okay, now you've written it, now you need to share it. You still can't keep it to yourself. And there are different avenues to do that. You can self-publish, you can enter writing contests. There's a lot of those, and that's how a lot of authors get discovered. You can, or you can try to pursue the traditional publishing route. That can be difficult, but especially these days, if you're a writer of color, a lot of publishers are looking for books that are written by people of color. Excuse me. And I think that goes for comic books as well. So I think that it's really just a matter of putting yourself out there. Like, don't tell yourself, oh, it's because I'm Black, I can't do this. It's like, no, it's because you're Black that you can and you should. So I would definitely say, you know, write your stuff, make sure everything is like tight. Like if you have your story, you need to edit it and make sure that there's no loopholes, there's no not loopholes, no plot holes, that like nothing kind of like falls apart at some point, or you like you had this idea here and then you dropped it here, or like you forgot about it. And sometimes it helps also to have another pair of eyes on it. So like get a friend, get a family member to just read it, or like you read it to them and just see what they think. And then after that, once you get some feedback on the idea, rehash it a little bit, because I had to rehash the Avat prints several times. I don't want to talk about how many times I did it. And then you just have to go out and find different ways to put yourself out there, and let the chips fall where they may, because you could very well be the next. You could have the next Children of Blood and Bones, or the next Three Musketeers. You know, who knows?
Or the next Avat Prince.
Yes, that too.
Right. I think that's.
Well, there's only one. There's only one. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that's a really good point to, like, you know, do it. Just do it, right? And
like Nike.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect the first time. Like your first draft doesn't have to be perfect, because you can redo it and redo it and redo it. And that's something that, you know, we have to do. So don't expect everything to be perfect the first time you come out. I think that's a really good point.
Definitely.
Well, Myranda, it's been really, 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 really amazing having this conversation with you and you sharing your work. Can you please let us know where we can find your work and you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram. Go to, just type in _m.v.b. That's me. You'll see my logo, MVP. So you can find me there, and then I have links to my website there. So my website is kind of long. I'm going to be getting a domain soon, hopefully. MyrandaVPeterson.wixsite.com/books. Then you can find more of my stuff. You can order my books either through my site, through Amazon, or you can order my books on Barnes & Noble. I also have my books on there. And if anybody has Vero, that's like the app that's trying to like contest Instagram, because Instagram's kind of getting whack, so people are trying to move. So if you find me on Vero, again, it's the same username, _m.v.p, and you will see me and all of my art and my links and all stuff.
And plus you got like the dopest initials of all time, MVP. Which is super cool. But if you would do me a favor and just either put it in the chat or email it to me so I can put it with this video when it posts up, so people can find your work and support your work, because I think it's great and we need more of it.
Thank you.
But I want to thank everybody for joining us for this Comics in Color, the last Comics in Color of 2020. This was a challenging year. As you know, we're all set to do the festival and coronavirus came, but we still managed to have a lot of great things happen this year in 2020, a lot of great panels and events. So if virtually, we still had them happen. And let me let you know that I am still working on getting this festival together for 2021. I've reached out to RCC to talk to them about some ideas I have for doing a kind of hybrid festival if things aren't back together by the spring, doing perhaps an outdoor festival along with some virtual content. So that's in the works. So keep your eye out for that. And we got some more Comics in Color monthly sessions coming up. January is to be announced. February is our 3rd year anniversary, so we're going to try to make that into a big deal and bring in all the old people, not old people, but the previous people who have presented here at Comics in Color, so we can kind of just have a recap and see what everybody's doing. And then in March, we have Dummy Comics, who has a whole line of comics to check out, and I'll put more stuff about them as it comes closer. So definitely, check out comicsincolor.org, where we have all of the videos from all of the past sessions we've had, and this one will be up there. And also updates about what's coming up next. So check us out there. And thanks again for coming. And it's been wonderful. And, more great stuff to come in the future.
Awesome. Thanks for
All
having
right.
me again, guys. This was fun.
Yeah, this was great.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure, guys. Always a pleasure.
Sorry,
Yes.
another event.
No problem. I'm glad you got to make it.
Bye,
Excellent.
thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Peace.
All right,
See you
Peace,
after
everyone.
this meeting.
Okay. I'll be downstairs soon, honey. Bye.
Bye.